Hey y'all, this is episode 1 of Thanks for Letting Me Share. I'm Dwayne.
And I'm TJ.
TJ and I go back quite a while. Quick backstory. TJ and I are both in recovery. We met at rehab.
Yes.
Our very first rehab, actually.
For both of us.
Yeah.
Right? 2018?
Yeah. That's about right. When you go into rehab, they check you in with all the medical things and like they do like blood work and stuff. And I went in to go get poked with my needles. And TJ was sitting there. So I was just like, I'm nervous. I talk to people when I'm nervous to try to just kind of like break the tension. And so I'm just like, hey, what's up? Mm-hmm. And then we started chatting and then we hung out throughout that rehab. And 6 years later, we are still very much connected. We do a lot of things in recovery together. You know, I was at her wedding, so that was awesome.
Yeah. I can't believe you remember, like, the details of the first day. Like, I was drunk. Like, I go to rehab drunk. I don't go, like, coherent in any manner, so I can't remember day one. But I'm pretty certain I remember being like, oh, there's Dwayne, a black person. Let's talk to them. Because it just felt like, I don't know, recovery spaces in general, sometimes it's, you don't really see a lot of people of color. So that was nice. It felt pretty good.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think, and we've both ended up we've been in groups that are POC groups, and they can have their upsides and their downsides. I remember one that I've been to, or a couple I've been to, have been like really good and very solution oriented and very much about recovery. And then some spaces you go to where it's just complaining about white people, mm-hmm. which, you know, I'm not a fan of, you know, not just in general, but like most of my closest friends are white, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a big fan of like individual connections. So like if I see a black person or a person of color, or even a queer person in the room, I'm more likely to build a relationship one-on-one with them. And I feel like that's helped me in my journey because at this point, I don't even count on walking into a room and seeing a lot of people of color. You know, I just count on I'm going to go here and I got to be open to whatever is in the room. And if there's someone who maybe needs to see someone that looks like them or whatever, I can be that person and I'm going to go up, say hi, talk to them because that's what I needed when I was first coming around. People who look like me, women, you know, whatever. And so yeah, I try to be that, build a community of people that I need to have for myself. So
yeah, and you know, speaking on that, people do have different needs because I know that I didn't really need a lot of people that looked like me as much as just people who are open-minded. Like I'd never considered like walking into a room and like how many black folks am I going to see here or how many men am I going to see here or like anything like that. I just kind of walked into a room like, all right, let me hear what they're saying, you know, and there are some groups that, you know, it's just like you said, individual. Each group is different. Like there are some groups where I'm just like, who let these people to like speak. And then there are some groups where I'm just like, every group should be like this, you know?
I feel like the one thing that I didn't know I needed, but have gravitated toward is meanings that are solutions oriented, right? That's a term that we throw out all the time. People who know what they're talking about with recovery, working the 12 steps of AA, or just, you know, focus on their growth and wellness versus those meetings where people are putting out war stories. I feel like those were the ones where it was harder for me to identify with. So if I'm in a room, it doesn't matter necessarily what the people look like, you know, whether I look like them or not, as long as they're talking about the stuff that's actually going to help me grow, I can stay in those spaces.
Yeah. And that's just not in one particular fellowship because, you know, for people that don't know, there are several different fellowships. Like, and a lot of times, you know, I've been to all of them and like, I haven't done everything, but like sometimes like a meeting is a meeting to me, right? A recovery group is a recovery group to me. As long as it's like you said about the solution and staying sober and staying clean. like at the end of the day, that's all that really matters. Like no matter
Mm-hmm.
how you do it, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
And I think that gets lost sometimes. I have friends that are very like anti AA, for example.
Same. Yeah.
I am.
I was very anti AA. Like I was that person.
Yeah, AA was probably the first thing that I did, but I've also done what morphed into Recovery Dharma now, but it was called Refuge Recovery when like we first came out. I've been to NA meetings, I've been to CMA meetings, I've been to HA meetings. Those were not things that I was into. Actually, like, and it's funny because I actually went to a CMA meeting to try to like get talked out of going into rehab one time, and they actually talked me into it, and they were like, "Yeah, nah, it seems like you need to go." And so at that point, that was the third one that I went to, and actually turned out to be the most beneficial, right? And when people do like rehab, when I was doing rehab searches, right, I knew, the things that you see in the movies a lot. There's okay, so they're gonna have yoga, and they're gonna have like a fitness center, and they're gonna have all of these things in these nice grounds, right? I went to a rehab that had none of that, and I was so grateful to be there because I was like, okay, this is literally like 2 rooms. Well, a few rooms, and none of the bells and whistles, and it's just like focus on your recovery, like focus on what you're here for.
Yeah.
And then I was introduced to something else there, called DBT, which I'm a big proponent of therapy and medication. Not disclaimer, I'm not whatever you do, that's fine. I'm not a medical marijuana guy, but like, I'm take psych meds that are prescribed to me by a doctor, not, a quote unquote doctor who just doesn't care because they're getting your money.
Right.
But I was introduced to a therapy called DBT, and I really credit that with saving my life and like changing a lot of the perspective that I had on life, and not even that, just how to like deal with the emotions and everything, and that like getting dysregulated, because at the end of the day, this is what I kind of learned, is like that's why I used anyway, right? We mentioned like the 12 steps. The first one is like talking about being powerless and unmanageable, right? And it's like, yeah, of course, once I like, why stop once I start? But and also it's like I gotta analyze why I wanted to start in the first place.
Yes, definitely. And I could talk about that stuff all day because the field that I'm in. But I think none of this stuff is in a box by itself. Like it's all related. Our childhood stories, our trauma, what we experience going through like the addiction and how it's progressive, and it may start off one day, but by the end you're in it, and then it's starting to change. Like all of that is part of like the process of being sick. And then so I feel like recovery equally looks like, at least for me, it's been a little bit of everything. It's not just, there's always all these debates in the field, like rehab and therapy versus harm reduction, which we can do a whole episode on all these things, right? Versus 12 steps versus like, and specifically AA or NA versus Dharma versus, some of these other things that people have. And it's just like, for me, I needed a little bit of everything. I needed to be able to test some things, find out that it worked at that time or did not work at that time. Whatever it was, whatever suggestions, when I finally became open, doing whatever people suggested, because I didn't know what I was doing on my own. I take psych meds too, but at one point I was fighting that. At one point I fought AA. At one point I fought rehab. Like all these things. It was like, nope, never going to do it. But in order to get better, because I had all these things, multiple, disorders and ADHD, which was undiagnosed forever, and trauma, like all these things. And it was just like, I'm going to need to combat each and every one of these things with a different tool. And that's like what my recovery's been like. And the biggest thing for me is just being open to whatever help is there.
I think mentioning trauma and like going through addiction, we talk about trauma a lot, about like the things that happen to us. And I'm starting to realize in the last like week or so, a couple weeks, that some of the things that we've done under these circumstances can be traumatic. And I'm just starting to realize that my actions could have actually been traumatic to me, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I've done things that I normally wouldn't do, right? And like things that like in a sober mind, I'm so deeply ashamed of, but I know that I can't take it back or undo it. And like, and that's one of the things, because that guilt that happens when you do things like that kind of keeps you going sometimes. And those things pop up. It's like, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I did that. Like, shut up, brain, shut up, brain, shut up, brain. I know how to shut you up, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Shame and guilt. Like, just using allowed me to numb all that. But it was also like, the more I used, the more shameful things I did. So it was like,
Right.
I wake up in the morning and it's like, oh shit, I did that too. Let's drink. Right? It's this never ending cycle. And it's just this hole that keeps getting deeper and deeper, and it's harder and harder to climb out of. Like, and I'm glad I climbed out of it, or started to when I did, because it was getting pretty bad. And, you know, I'm just grateful for that. But it can get pretty dark. Everything that's going on up here in my head. And it's funny because I remember going to one eating disorder treatment, and the psychiatrist there was like, we were talking about anxiety, and I was like, yeah, I'm anxious all the time. And he's like, you don't look very anxious right now. And I'm like, if you were only in this brain of mine,
Right.
and in this body, like tension, fidgeting, you know, just crazy thoughts all the time. But like, I look fine on the outside, and I'm able to function in the real world, you know, pretty easily, even, you know, for most of my use. Right. And then, so it's very hard to be able to identify within somebody else, and for that person to identify within themselves that like, there's a lot going on here that I need to figure out.
I didn't even think I had anxiety when I was diagnosed with it. I was like, what are you talking about? I'm not nervous about any of this shit. Like, I'm not nervous at all. Like, I'm not particularly, well, like, jumpy or, well, I guess I can be, like, when people sneak up on me. But also, I was the youngest child, so bad things happen when people sneak up on me.
Yes.
So, yeah, no, I wasn't. I was sitting in a group therapy session, and the therapist was describing all of these feelings that I felt, and then she was like, and you know, and all that anxiety combined, and I was like, wait a minute, is that what anxiety is? And she was like, yeah. I was like, oh shit, I got all of that. You know, yes, I had no idea.
Yeah, and you know what's crazy? You saying that you had no idea. Like, I think I had a similar experience. I remember I had to be like 13 or 14, maybe older. I don't really remember the details, but I remember there was a summer where I felt like I was stuck to the couch, and I would have these like mini heart attacks or panic attacks or something. I didn't know what was going on with me. Like, now looking back, I was probably having some like panic attacks or anxiety episodes and just having no idea. And I didn't want to tell my parents because, you know, at the time my mom was kind of that school of thought, like many parents are. What do you have to be depressed about? What do you have to be, you know, going on? Why are you this way? Right. And so it's like, I'm not going to bring this up to anyone. I'm just going to lay here and die.
In case you haven't figured it out, to Black households.
Yes. So it was just like that was anxiety. Whatever was happening to me that summer, it was so scary, and I had no idea, nobody to talk to. Yeah. And I've lived with that my whole life. And I've lived with like ADHD my whole life. Like, why am I doing these things that could be its own show too, right? Undiagnosed things that we're dealing with.
Well, I was diagnosed, but like, you know, in the 90s, like my mom was like, pretty much, you remember that South Park episode about ADHD where they just slapped the shit out of the kid and were like, sit down and study.
Oh,
like,
shit.
That was basically it. Like, there was going to be no medication, no medicating of any of this. You were just gonna, and so like I realized that like a lot of the things that I was always under that, like, okay, realize what my deficiencies are, and you know, come up with strategies to cope with it.
Same.
And you know, it was just like in the last like year or two, like watching, it would be all of this ADHD stuff would come up on TikTok and like Instagram Reels, and I was like, oh, is that why I did that? Like, I thought it was just, that was just me. That was just my personality. And like, that was just the things that I had to do. And just hearing somebody else say, hey, this is what that is. It's like, you know, it's crazy. Yeah. And on that, I don't know when this is going to come out, but I'll probably be 40 by the time this comes out, right? Because my birthday's in a few weeks.
Okay.
And to just find out like 2 weeks ago or a week ago that I was having panic episodes and I had no idea that it was panic episodes, because the things that that like the therapist, I joined a study to study like the effects of medical marijuana on anxiety. And at first I was like, ma'am, I can't be in your study. Like, I don't, you know. And she was like, well, you know, obviously they need a control group. Yeah. I'm the control group. Okay. So, yeah, but we're going through this questionnaire, and this thing that I thought that I just did, like, I thought that when I just got mad and overwhelmed, I just needed to like just go into like my place. And I didn't realize that when there's that heightened sense of things, when I just kind of like shut it down and I go into autopilot, that dissociation is a panic. Like, it's a panic episode. I had no idea. I thought that was just me. Like, all right, I'm just going to get through the day, because if I let out what's really going on, I'm going to, feelings and might get hurt, like, or like I'm going to lose it if I like engage with what's going on around me. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, and I had no idea. Yeah, it's pretty deep. It goes back, and even to your point. So you said when you were younger, you had an ADHD diagnosis, and for me, I don't even think it was ever considered. Like, and that's the thing. Like, a lot of this stuff is different for men versus women. Yeah, like, it's hidden for us. It shows up different. I learned how to mask very young, and I held on to that. And so there's always this like difference for me between like the person I really am and what I'm projecting to the world, because this is how I was told I need to show up to be able to still get things done. And I just never felt authentic in my own skin. And I always felt different, right? That feeling of like not fitting in, not, you know, just, I don't know. But when people started saying like, it may be ADHD undiagnosed, and it looks different for women. For me, it's distraction and inattentiveness, right? I'm not the hyper. Like, the hyper for me is inside. People can't see the hyper, but it's internal. And then it's like easily distracted, not able to pay attention. Like, for me, the jumping around all the time, the going from this to that is just a reflection of like what's happening inside. So it's just, I'm glad we figured this out, because they're starting to see, or maybe they've already had the research, but there's a correlation between people who have addictions, self-medicating, right? We're self-medicating anxiety, ADHD, depression, right? And so it's really important to start paying attention to these things, because maybe it can be preventative if we catch these things earlier. If we expand, you know, what these undiagnosed disorders, and not to put anyone in a box, but just to give people the help that we need, then maybe we can prevent some of these more severe mental health diagnoses. I don't know. No, you're right. And, you know, how do I say this? So the things that we talk about, how like it shows up different, and like things show up different in men and women, like a lot of it shows up the same. We just react to it differently, right? That's fair. Like, you know, I don't think I was particularly hyperactive as a kid. Like, especially seeing kids, like, as I grow up, I was just being a kid. But, you know, I guess... Also, black kids aren't allowed to be hyperactive. Right. Just say that. We're not allowed to run around and misbehave like Susie. Or, you know, or, like, question anything, really. Yeah. Oh, my gosh. Yes. Well, you know, all right. This is All right, maybe this is gonna be on a resentments episode, but I remember in fucking 8th grade, it was me and this kid Scott. We were both told we weren't allowed to go on our school trip because we were, had gotten in trouble too many times, right? Scott's a white kid, like ended up going to private school. His dad has some position in the city, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, Scott ended up getting to go. He was in more trouble than I was.
Right.
And like, the shit that he did was, like, all I would do, like, if I ask a question or I ask too many questions, get out.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm shaking my leg, and get out. If I'm clicking my pen, get out.
Yeah.
If I'm humming a song, get out.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I guess in a way I don't know if at that point, like, teachers were even trained to understand that, like, hey, children are different, mm-hmm. and every single one is different, and at this point you need to, like, it's not that you need to, like, overextend yourself for one child or another, but just be, like, mindful and aware of what's going on, because you know what, then that child isn't going to grow up thinking that there's something wrong with them and then end up where we ended up. Mm-hmm. And the crazy thing is like, when I started using drugs and when I started drinking, the thing about it is that it made me feel normal.
Yep.
It, like, evened me out. Same. In a way that, like, nothing else that I'd done had ever done. Same. Well, there were a couple things that I'd done that kind of put me in that state, but I couldn't do those all the time. Mm-hmm. Like, you can't play sports 24/7. I can't play music 24/7 or be like, but I can be high all the time. I can be drunk all the time or, like, have some sort of buzz, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I
didn't start drinking until I was 19 in college. But before that, I have an eating disorder, and my eating disorder started at 12. So I needed something to feel settled, and that did it for a long time until I got access to alcohol. But once I, like, had that first drink, it was like, yes. I just felt like, I don't know, I always feel like my skin is, like, the only thing holding me together, and it felt like everything just came together. Like, it felt like all the pieces just fit that first drink. Like, I'm here, I'm grounded, I'm, like, the way people talk about, I don't know, just being present. I just felt present. I felt like I was in control of myself. I felt confident, and I didn't want that to stop. I wanted, like, that was my new reality, and drinking got me there, and I wanted to keep that going on. So, like, I was definitely a problem drinker day one. But it was because I just, self-medicating. Like, it was the thing that just made me feel connected to myself and other people. And, yeah, I just needed it. I needed it for a long time.
I agree. And I remember, I'll say this, everything that I did, well, just about everything that I did, like, I didn't start drinking until I was 18, but I started smoking weed at 16. In my 20s, I started doing uppers and things like that. And every time that I did a new drug or something, or experienced something new, I was convinced that everybody around who I'd seen before was faking, because I didn't have any of those reactions to any of that stuff. I was just like, oh, I'm chilling. Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm good. Like, all of the people who were, like, acting stupid when they smoked weed, I'm just like, the fuck is wrong with y'all? Like, y'all are faking it. People that act ridiculous when they're drunk, I'm like, what is, like, nah, that's not what it feels like. You're just being obnoxious. Like, people that act all speedy when they use uppers, but also the ADHD thing. When I use uppers, I chill. I chill to the point where, like, people would think that there was something wrong with me, and I'm just like, actually, I feel the best I've ever felt in my life.
Yeah.
But, like, I guess at the end of the day, I want to see more people understand that, like, what's going on in them, and, like, kind of, like, seek that the less destructive solutions before, you know, it gets to a point where like they need to end up in multiple rehabs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. I could never understand when people said like alcohol is a depressant, because for me, it boosted me, like it gave me like power and control, and it just got me where I wanted to go. I felt like a superhero. I felt like I was on top of the world for a long time. Like that's the beginning of the story, right? Down the line, it changed, and it did become that depressant. By the end of my like drinking career, I had suicidal ideations and depressed and isolating, like all the things that they said it is. But my reality was that it took a long time to get there. It was like a process of, you know, this is helping me out, and then it turned on me. And so like I do want people to be aware that like it does different things to different people, right? Some people have the immediate effect of being sick and they can't handle it and they get drunk and they're like, nah, I'm good. But some people are like, oh, I'm drinking and drinking and drinking and I'm just able to go. I'm not really drunk. I'm holding it. I'm not vomiting. I'm, you know, whatever. Like everyone's process is different. But what I stress to people is like, it can change. So that whole process of it being helpful to me definitely changed where it wasn't anymore. Hence why I went to the multiple rehabs. For me, it was 12. How many was it for you?
4.
Okay.
There were many more relapses than that, but I just didn't go.
Yeah. And when I say rehab, I mean like anything like inpatient, right? Like detox, residential, inpatient, whatever, all that stuff. I'm not living in my own home. I'm going to a treatment somewhere.
Okay. Well, if you're considering like psych holds, then we're gonna say 6.
Psych holds count. I'll add my eating disorder treatment, so that's 13. Yeah. And that doesn't even include like the PHPs, the IOPs, right? Which is outpatient help, right? I'm living in my own house and I get up and I go somewhere to get the support. That doesn't even count for all of those. But yeah, my 13 trips.
Yeah, I couldn't even afford that, but.
Right, I do. I mean, that's another thing too. Like, I say that jokingly, but it really just means I had good insurance, good access, right?
Yeah.
Not everyone has that. And that's the unfortunate thing is like a lot of people are out here needing the help, and the system is so like, it makes it so hard for people to get the help that they need. So I don't talk about, you know, I talk about it lightly, but I'm not ignoring the fact that I'm a little bit privileged in that way, that I had the access to the healthcare that I needed.
It makes them more money to lock them up and to treat them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then when you talk about like eating disorder treatment, like that is hard for anyone to get into. It was hard for me to get into, and it wasn't until like I really think I only got into it because I was going directly from a rehab and they were able to help facilitate the process. But you talk about money, you talk about the qualifications, like how sick you need to be to even get in. Like that's you could do a whole episode on that. Like, but yeah. So what got you into rehab that first time?
You know what? We're going to save that for, episode 2. So thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Thanks for letting us share.